I can remember, as a high school student, an occasion when my year group was asked to fill out a form. I don't remember what the purpose of the form was, but I do remember that there was a section in which we needed to tick the appropriate box to identify our ethnicity. The options included Maori, Samoan, Chinese, and many, many more. What I particularly remember was that many of my fellow students took exception to a box which was simply titled Pākehā. Some chose to respond to this by crossing out the word Pākehā and choosing to write in the word European instead. This was the early 1990s. At that point in time, many people I knew believed Pākehā to be a derogatory word, an insult, meaning something like white pig or worse. Some of you will have shared that misconception. And yes, it is a misconception. The origins of the word Pākehā are hazy, but what we can say about the word itself is that no part of it can be translated as either white or as pig, which means we can kick that particular idea into the realm of mythology. Like many people of my generation, it has been through ongoing interaction and relationship with Maori that I gained a different sense of cultural identity. For some of us, it has been a journey to shift away from the idea of being European towards a cultural identity that has been shaped and formed by this land. Pākehā has become the right word for me and for others, as it acknowledges a deep connection to this place as tangata tiriti. For me, my sense of cultural identity began to grow through belonging and growing up in the Anglican Church. As a child, I was not really aware of the bicultural work done by this church in the 1980s that went on to create the Three Tikanga Church. The Three Tikanga Church is the way Anglicans in this part of the world have tried to honour Te Tiriti or Waitangi by giving equal status to Māori, Pasifika and Pākehā people. But as a teenager, I came to benefit greatly from this model of church, particularly through the cultural exchanges across tikanga that began happening in Anglican youth ministry. I can remember being at my first Three Tikanga Anglican youth event and seeing how our Māori and Pasifika partners were comfortable in their own culture in a way that we Pākehā young people were not. By this I mean that Māori and Pasifika young people not only knew the music, dance and language of their own people, they also had a profound sense of where they had come from and where they might be going. These were young people who embodied who they were. They did it in a way I did not. It was a moment for me of realising that I had a lot to learn about my place in Aotearoa. And with that came a number of tough lessons. I learned that colonisation was real and deeply affected many people I was coming to care deeply about. And here I am not talking about colonisation as a past historical event, but as a present-day reality, which still impacts upon all of our lives. If there is one experience that causes great distress, it is the experience of being wrong. Like most of us, when I am wrong, I will typically exert a lot of energy convincing myself that this is not the case. Trust me, arguments with my teenage daughter bear this out, where I can stubbornly refuse to change my mind even when she is right and I am not. But when engaging with others whose cultural identities and experiences were different to my own, I had to face the fact that many of the assumptions I held about Aotearoa being a fair and just society were wrong. My beliefs about what I was entitled to as a citizen of this country were wrong. The difficult truth is that I hold incredible privilege as a Pākehā. It was difficult accepting the truth of that because the only ethical response to knowing that you are in a better position than others is to give some of that privilege up. My cultural inheritance had told me a story about my place as a New Zealander, which was a lie. So many of my unspoken assumptions were wrong. It can be incredibly difficult to change our perspective. We live in a world that can be really unkind towards people who change their mind about something. If the last year in politics in this country has shown us anything, it's that our politicians are very aware of the dangers of changing their opinion. To revise an opinion publicly leaves them open to criticism of flip-flopping on the issues. There is a bizarre expectation that leaders in any field should hold firm, unwavering opinions. Being perceived as strong is often valued over being wise. I'm sure you're all sitting there now thinking about various leaders that we could characterise as wanting to be strong rather than wise. I'll leave you all to make those connections for yourselves. An effective leader in any setting is often the person who is prepared to be swayed by ideas that may differ from their own. We should be wary of any leader who abandons good counsel because they value their own opinion above that of anyone else. As George Bernard Shaw once wrote, those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. What I am getting at here is that our ability to change our mind is often viewed as a negative, both by ourselves and by others. We hate admitting mistakes or giving voice to a change of heart, because doing so places us in a vulnerable position. Our ego warns us that if we let our guard down for even a moment, others will ridicule us. Our ego loves to tell us these little untruths. But most of all, our ego only ever wants us to think the best of ourselves. Our ego is constantly trying to make us feel good and to ignore feelings which make us uncomfortable or feel bad. And this is why for many of us Pākehā, our ego tells us that colonisation has nothing to do with us. We should all just move on, get over it, leave the past in the past. Which frankly is an immature and completely unhelpful point of view. Outside of this church today is a billboard. It's a grand return for this billboard. I'm glad it's timed in nicely around Waitangi. It carries the words, "Together for Te Tiriti." It is a statement to the wider community that we believe in honouring Te Tiriti or Waitangi, as well as the principles of Te Tiriti and how those principles have been tested and incorporated into the laws of this country. But that billboard is also a challenge to us as a church community. Are we living up to the promises enshrined in Te Tiriti? When Te Tiriti was being drafted, it drew upon the concept of covenant, the Jewish understanding of partnership between humanity and God explored throughout the Old Testament. A covenant is not a contract. Rather, it is an agreement between different parties to uphold and support the well-being of each other. Kind of like a marriage, where two people make promises to each other. Part of our commitment to honouring Te Tiriti is a commitment to listen to the voice of our partner. Ideally, that's what partners in a marriage do too. Listen to each other and respond in ways that speak of love and care. Over the last year, our treaty partner has been speaking loudly and clearly in opposition to the Treaty Principles Bill and the harm that it is doing to all of us. Only this past Thursday, the President of the Methodist Church, speaking on the treaty grounds, stated that the actions of the Crown in this last year have been equivalent of the Crown filing for a divorce from Maori. I hope I can speak for all of us when I say that the people of St Matthew and the city want no part in such a divorce. Waitangi Day is a day to remember the commitment that our forebears made to each other's well-being and our part in carrying on that relationship. Waitangi Day is a time to ask ourselves if there are ways we can affirm and support the aspirations of those whose connection to this land is different to our own. And for those of us who belong to communities like this one, the treaty raises the question of whether we have truly done all that we can do to love our treaty partner. Amen.